What's going on, guys? This is VinylicPuma, back with the Borderlands 3 video for you guys, and today I figured I'd go over what I think are some of the best Eridium farming locations in this game. Now real quick, and before we start, it is worth noting that at the time of making this video, there is currently an event for Borderlands 3 going on that boosts your Eridium drops. Because of that, this video will be done in two parts. Part 1 will go over what I think are some of the best places to farm Eridium before this event or in the absence of these boosted loot drops. And then in Part 2, we'll go over how the increased Eridium drop rate affects each of the methods described in Part 1. And if I find a better method for this particular event, we'll also be discussing it in Part 2. And as always, definitely be sure to smash like on this video if you know how to say Eridium backwards, and failing that, let me know all of your Muay Thaiers in the comments section below. Otherwise, I guess we'll start here by talking about what I think is the best method of getting Eridium in the super early game, and then we'll just work our way from there. Now to be clear, I define the super early game as being before you beat the Rampager and loot the vault on Promethea. At this point in the game, you're likely below level 20, and you don't have access to the Eridium artifact yet, which will allow you to smash Eridium deposits. Because of this, the best way to get Eridium is usually to farm some of the available bosses, of which I think there are two that are most ideal. The first of which just so happens to be Mouthpiece. Mouthpiece will be the weakest boss you can farm Eridium from in the super early game, as he's the lowest possible level boss you can encounter that will still drop Eridium. With some decent weapons at around level 15 or so, he'll be a pushover, and you can usually and pretty consistently get about 1 to 4 Eridium from him each time. I'll admit this is not very much, but it's actually pretty decent considering the circumstances surrounding some of the other later bosses, which we'll be discussing later on. The second boss, which is Gigamind, is for if you want to get Eridium faster. This ends up working out as you can avoid invulnerability stages that would make the fight longer like it does on Mouthpiece. Since Gigamind just has a health bar and a shield, you can use considerably higher level and more powerful weapons to take him down pretty quickly, thus netting you the same 1 to 4 Eridium or so that you can also get from Mouthpiece. As I said, farming either of these guys will usually net you anywhere between 1 to 4 Eridium each time. I'll admit that's not a whole lot in the grander scheme of things, but it will at least allow you to get some of the cheaper room decorations and maybe allow you to get some decent gear from MOXXI'S Eridium slots, or maybe even Crazy Earl's Veteran's Good Machine if you're below level 10. After this stage in the game though, I think you'll agree that Eridium farming most bosses yields pretty lackluster results. Oddly, there seem to be an entire class of bosses that only provide you 1 to 4 Eridium each time you farm them. So whether it be things like Katagawa's Ball, Captain Trant, or the Warden, all of them yield pretty terrible Eridium drops despite the fact that there may be other good reasons to farm these bosses. Fortunately, many of the vault bosses, whether it be ones like the Rampager, Grave Ward, Troy, or Tyrene, all have fairly good Eridium yields, and not only that, but these Eridium drops appear to be consistent regardless of game difficulty. So assuming you beat a level 35 or so Grave Ward on normal, you should receive the same amount of Eridium that you would, provided you took on Grave Ward at level 50 in Mayhem 3. So assuming you're at maximum level and you have really good gear, you could simply go back to normal mode and farm the vault bosses for some easy Eridium. As for specific yields from these bosses, I seem to get about 10 to 15 or so each time I manage to defeat one, which after about 10 kills or so, you should easily have about 100, maybe even 150 Eridium, which is pretty good. However, I think some vault bosses are better than others. I think the very best is the Grave Ward, simply for the fact that much like Gigamind and some of the other regular bosses, he has a conventional health bar and no invulnerability stages. Because of that, Grave Ward can be defeated very quickly by a max level character with quality gear, and the biggest difficulty you would probably encounter would just be to not fall off the stage when Grave Ward tilts it. Alternatively, and if you decide to go a route which involves taking on a vault boss with an invulnerability stage, I'd recommend you take on the Rampager. This is because the Rampager not only drops the standard 10 to 15 Eridium or so, but when you enter the Rampager's vault, you can break 2 Eridium chests for some additional Eridium, making farming the Rampager a better method than Troy or Tyrene, which unfortunately don't offer this kind of opportunity. In the end, though, it's up to you as to which of the vault bosses you decide to farm, However, if I had to pick, I'd probably go with either Grave Ward or the Rampager and avoid Troy and Tyrene. However, if you're not at maximum level, you've beaten the Rampager and not beaten the game yet, there is another Iridium farming method you can do that involves farming Iridium deposits. While this is sort of hard to do in most areas, as many areas randomly spawn Iridium, there are at least 2 different areas of the game that not only spawn Iridium deposits consistently, but also allow you to get fairly high yields as well. The first location I'd probably recommend would be in the Voracious Canopy. If you go down to the pool area with the waterfall, you could pass through and behind the waterfall area to find yourself in an Iridium cave. Once inside, platform up some of the rocks, and once you go deeper inside, you should find at least a few Iridium deposits here that you can break. Collect the Iridium, save and quit, and then rinse and repeat. The second location I'd recommend would be in Carnivora. In order to farm this location consistently, you'll need to make it past the entire initial gauntlet area and get to the giant open desert. Starting at this point, you simply just need to travel to the large building in this area, and next to the building there should be a small shack, and if you slide or crouch and pass under the shutter, you could find a chest along with a bunch of Iridium deposits. While the chest won't refill each time you save and quit, the Iridium will, and this can be another way to farm for Iridium, without the hassle of having to defeat a boss. The Iridium yield for both of these can really vary, however, it's usually at least 10 to 15, sometimes more Iridium each time, which puts it about on par with some of the vault bosses. Now, if you're really efficient, I could foresee you farming Grave Ward at max level being a little bit faster than either of these methods, but if you're not at max level and you can't kill Grave Ward really quickly, I'd recommend farming Iridium in either of these locations, as I think you'll agree it's pretty fast. Now, as one last thing before we discuss part 2, I should probably mention that Borderlands 3 will also just randomly give you Iridium sometimes. I get this may sound a little weird, and I'll admit that I don't totally understand how this works, but sometimes as you load into your game after saving and quitting in a given area, Borderlands 3 will literally just give you some Iridium. To prove that this actually does happen, here's some footage here where I have about 2,123 Iridium in my inventory. However, and upon saving and quitting the game and then reloading back in, it displays that I have 2,133 Iridium. Now I'll admit that this seems really inconsistent, and my guess is that it's based on you receiving Iridium recently, but that aside, it is something to think about as you play through the game. Obviously, I wouldn't recommend you totally rely on this, but it is worth noting that this will happen from time to time, and it will increase your overall stock of Iridium. So just keep an eye on your stock, and who knows, you might just receive some randomly. Overall, and assuming there is no event for Borderlands 3 that will boost your Iridium drops, I'd recommend you do one of the aforementioned methods. And with that in mind, I think that will conclude the first section of this video. Now on to the second section. Alright, so with week 3 of this Borderlands Anniversary Event, it appears Gearbox has done a couple of things. Most of the real observable changes mostly revolve around Crazy Earl and MOXXI'S slots. In the case of the former, it appears that any item you could purchase from Crazy Earl is currently getting a 25% discount, meaning if you had an item that cost 300 Iridium before, it should now cost around 225 Iridium. As far as I could tell, this appears to affect all of Crazy Earl's customizations and cosmetics, so you should be able to get more with the amount of Iridium you already have. As far as MOXXI goes, the cost of playing her Iridium-based slots are cut in half. Where you might pay about 10 Iridium before, now you only have to pay around 5, which is pretty nice. So as opposed to just getting 1 spin of the slots, you will now get 2 for the same amount of Iridium. Otherwise, it's sort of hard to tell some of the other differences. As far as Crazy Earl's vending machines go, the price does seem to be a little bit better, but it's hard to tell without direct item comparisons. I will say that I haven't really seen a 1,000 plus Iridium item since this event started, but that could just be my luck and things are just as overpriced as they were before. The other thing that's kind of hard to tell is when it comes to Iridium drops. Beyond the obvious where it now appears Iridium can more commonly drop from random enemies, Iridium drops appear to be about the same, though slightly improved. After the hotfix, I managed to get around 6 Iridium from Mouthpiece and about 18 to 25 Iridium from Grave Ward. As I said, it doesn't seem to be drastically higher or anything, but it does seem like you're getting a little more Eridium than you were before. Probably the best example I can give is for when it comes to Eridium deposit farming. Before, there would be instances where I would smash a deposit of Eridium and only get 2 bars at minimum. Now it seems like I never get below 3. So, assuming you decide to go that route, you will be getting a little more Eridium each time you farm. As for how much, it really varies, but I seem to be able to get around 20 or so fairly consistently, which is a nice boost. Overall, I'd say the biggest benefit of participating in this event is simply the decreased cost at Eridium-based vendors. Getting a 25% discount for all items is pretty good and will allow you to get more stuff, provided you have a huge stock of Eridium. Add on the slightly improved Eridium drops, and it's fair to say you should be able to get most of the customizations that are available. Otherwise, guys, I think that's going to wrap up this particular video. If you enjoyed this video, definitely be sure to smash like, click the bell so you can be notified when I upload more Borderlands videos, and as always, and again, thank you all so much for supporting this channel. Take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.